What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite compact flagships, the Galaxy S10e. So this is a very cool phone. I absolutely love this phone. I compared it to some of my favorite phones this year. It still stands the test of time, and this phone has even come down in price. You can get this for a crazy cheap price of 120 bucks on eBay, and then an Amazon certified refurbished, they have them for $141. It's just an excellent deal, and this phone got the Android 12 update, One UI 4.1 update. That was the last major OS update for this phone, so I went over it. I wanted to kind of revisit it to just update you guys on how the experience is going so far. And it's been a pretty good experience with this phone. So for $120, this phone is getting 3 years of security patches, so that was the last major OS update with this phone, unfortunately. But man, is this still an excellent buy, and I'm going to show you guys actually why this is still an awesome compact flagship. Now, the screen on this phone is probably one of my favorite things about this phone. It's a 5.8-inch display, and it is extremely comfortable to hold. So a person with smaller hands could really one-hand this phone fairly easy than even these much bigger phones these days. Even if you take something like an iPhone 14 Pro here with a 6.1-inch display, this phone is still not as comfortable as this phone. So if you love small phones, usually the 5.8-inch area is pretty good. That's why the Zenfone 9 is an awesome pick as well for you guys who probably want a newer compact device. But the screen on here is extremely comfortable. The body of this phone makes it also very comfortable because it's curved, so it fits in the palm really well. So that's one of my favorite things. I love the screen on here. So the specs on the screen, it's a 5.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's HDR10 plus, and it's a 1080p display here, and it is also 438 for the PPI. It gets fairly bright. I've never had issues with this phone in terms of brightness, and yeah, it's just a nice screen to watch content on. Beautiful colors. You do have the punch hole up here, which is a bit bigger than most modern day punch holes, but it's really not that much of a distraction for me. So it's just overall just a beautiful experience as far as the screen wise. If you have smaller hands, you'll really like the screen, and plus you get these really cool wallpapers that you can add to your phone as well too. Speaking of the hardware, the S10e still has a premium design here, so it's still a glass and metal device. It actually still has a headphone jack down below for people who love wired earbuds and stuff like that. You also have on here IP68 dust and water resistant as well too, so you can get this phone wet and it will not break. And you also have on here micro SD card support, so you can actually expand the storage with the S10e as well. And speaking of the SD card support, let's go ahead and talk about the specs on this guy. So you have the Snapdragon 855 chip, and I need to rerun this, but you get the same similar scores on Android 12. But guys, the Snapdragon 855 chip is no joke. It's still really good when it comes to performance. So I dropped a full gaming test on this phone, and I'll show you guys. This phone is able to play games at high settings, no problem. I was able to play PUBG HDR Extreme, Fortnite played pretty well on here. Call of Duty Mobile ran really well. It just plays games really well. Now, again, the only issue with gaming hard on this phone is the battery life, which we'll talk about, is not that great on this phone. But man, does this phone kill it when it comes to gaming performance. It does a really good job. This phone doesn't really heat up that much. Again, I'm not a heavy gamer, but an hour of gaming on this phone, I did not notice that this phone was heating up or stuttering and crashing and stuff like that. The 855 to me is still a pretty efficient chipset. Now, what will surprise you about this phone is that this phone actually has all of the additional features that you would find on the newer Samsung Galaxy phones, like let's say for instance the S22 Ultra minus the S Pen support. So basically, One UI 4.1, you have your Samsung desktop support, which you can beam this phone to a TV or a monitor and you get a full desktop experience. Secure folders is on here as well too. You also have reverse wireless charging on here. Basically, all of your software features that you would find on flagship devices that are newer are still on the S10e as well too. So that is something that I just absolutely love. And then this phone has some really awesome sounding stereo speakers as well too. So really awesome sounding speakers, very good clarity, very good bass. For the size of this phone is really impressive. And also one of the things that I love about this phone, this is probably my favorite implementation of a fingerprint sensor, is having it up here where it's into the power button. So when you unlock the phone, it feels very natural. You also can take advantage of the face unlock on this phone as well too, just in case you don't really like this method. So overall, I just think this is a really well designed phone. It's really fast as well too. And the Android 12 update, it has smoothed out the animations. I noticed on here, the phone was never really slow, but I noticed animation and speed is a little bit more consistent with this phone as well too. So everything just feels very buttery smooth. I rarely see hiccups with this phone. So the experience has been really good with the Android 12 update One UI 4.1. Alright, so let's talk about the cameras on the S10e. Are the cameras any good on this phone? And the cameras are still pretty good on the S10e, guys. I compared it to the Zenfone 9 and the new iPhone. I compared it to the S22 Ultra. So what I noticed is that the only sort of area where it lacks to newer phones is it doesn't do as good as newer phones in low light settings. The pictures can get a little soft when we take light out, but I'm telling you, in medium to well lit, this phone takes some awesome pictures for $120. So remember that you're getting a very good camera for $120. I'm genuinely impressed with how these cameras have aged. So very punchy colors. The ultra wide is pretty consistent with the main lens. You have a 12 megapixel standard. You also have a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60 on the front and back, and then you have a 10 megapixel selfie cam on here. The selfie cam does a pretty good job too on this phone, but man, the dynamic range, the detail on this phone is still really good. Like I say, in good lighting, it's gonna look great. I can't see anybody paying like $120 for this phone and saying that the camera's not good, because honestly, it's competitive to some phones that are a little bit more expensive to me. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Here's our video on the S10e. Here's our ultra wide as well. Let's talk about the battery life. So that's probably the only downside with this phone, is that battery life, you can't really get a full day of battery life out of this phone. So you have a 3100 milliamp battery. You do have wireless charging and reverse wireless charging as well too. So basically this phone does around 4 hours 30 minutes of screen on time. Like I said, the update didn't really improve battery life, and didn't make it worse, which is good. But yeah, so if I were you, I would probably buy a battery pack for this phone. And you can get a battery pack for pretty cheap on Amazon these days, or eBay. But yeah, so if you're really worried about battery life, I just buy a battery pack and put it on this phone. Or they have a battery case that you can buy with this phone as well too. And since you're getting the phone so cheap, it's not really gonna, I think it's a good deal to do that. But 4 hours, yeah, you definitely can't be like gaming and doing hardcore stuff on this phone, because you will need to charge it. So that's the only downside with the S10e. So what do you guys think about the S10e? I think it's an amazing phone for $120. Like I said, it's getting security patches as well too. So the Android 12 update has been really good on this phone. It's very fast, and no issues in terms of quality. And what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.